Hello and welcome. Can India Inc. bring about social change? Well, let's talk to someone who read the Jaago Re campaign, which was led by Tata Tea or now Tata Global Beverages, and ask whether this kind of a campaign can be taken to something else, particularly as CSR becomes mandatory for India Inc. Sangeeta Talwar, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me on the program.
So Jaago Re was a transformational effort in some ways, right? Because you took the whole objective of improving or increasing the electoral rolls and bringing young India onto getting them franchised, enfranchised as it were. And then of course we've seen how subsequent years and to what's happening today, the role of young voters and the voting populace expand substantially. The larger question here is, this was a corporate initiative, right? And it obviously gathered some steam and so on. Is this something that you feel can be replicated across corporate India, and in what way?
Well, I think the intention certainly should be replicated. I just want to mention that, the Jaago Re campaign had a wonderful fit with the category that it was promoting. And I think some of the effort in terms of social change, I think in a very important aspect is that it should be enduring. And if you want something to be sustainable and enduring, I think it has to be a win-win situation both for the spender and the receiver. And in this case, the corporate and the consumer. And I think the Jaago Re campaign was a wonderful fit because it spoke about tea in the context of a social awakening, and tea basically awakens you in the morning. And I think the way the campaign started, it really set in process or put the seed of thought into the minds of a lot of young people that we elect a lot of politicians, but are they really equipped to do a great job? And then we rolled forward from there into anti-corruption and all those sort of issues. Rather bold stands, I think, for a brand to take.
Do you actually sell more tea because of that?
Well, the whole genesis and the thought behind the campaign was not really to just sell more tea. But Tata Tea in 2007 had become the country's largest brand by volume and value. And I think that was a great achievement. And we said to ourselves, hey, we're the leading tea brand in the largest tea consumption market in the world. And so can we start behaving like a leader? So it was, I think, more a demonstration of the fact that as a leader, I'm not going to engage with only the physical, tangible attributes of the product I sell, which is, the color of tea, the aroma of tea, etc., and the quality of tea. But really lift the connection with the consumer, link into the DNA of the consumer. Because the other reason why I think this campaign fitted very well, and why I'm mentioning it, is because you asked me whether this is a panacea for all industry. Tea is one of the largest consumption categories in the country. So it has a 91% penetration across urban and rural India. So literally everybody, including children, drink tea. And when there's something which is so deeply embedded in your everyday and in your DNA, that can really take this sort of stand and say, I awaken you every day and I awaken you to a world which needs questioning. So I just go back to the first point. I think it's very important that organizations look at sustainable and endurable ways of creating social transformation. But they have to see it in the context of their business, because I think that makes it acceptable for the consumer, and that makes it enduring for the organization.
So let me ask the social question. Is there a need to do it? No, the reason I'm asking is finally at the end of the day, only large corporations like Tata Tea could afford a campaign like this. Not too many people could afford to, even if they dreamt of doing this in their own way. It could be a motorcycle company, it could be an automobile car company, it could be anything, right? It need not be only a tea company.
That's why, Govind, I think it's important to do it in a way that it works for your business as well. And I think that's the the interdependence between business and society. And that's when business can make social transformation. But I think if it is only with the doing good objective, with no context in which it fits in, it's, I think, harder to do, and therefore traditionally people have looked at it as a cost. The other important feature, I think, of this is when you're trying to do something like this, it's very important to connect with the consumer. And I don't mean just an intellectual connection, but I think the way the whole campaign connected in terms of what it mounted, in terms of mapping 35 cities and being able to tell people where their electoral office was, providing them the voters form online, and then the tie-up with the election commission which said, okay, we'll accept these forms. So all of that, I think, serve to really bring this home. And while on that subject, I can just mention that other than Jaago Re, there were other initiatives that Tata Global Beverages undertook at that time, which was really to improve, let me say, the lives of stakeholders they were working with. So I'll give you 2 examples. One was we were working to sell tea in rural India, and we were working through some NGOs enlisting women in the village to sell tea. And for some of them, I mean, I went and visited these places. There were heart-rending stories. You know, a woman used to make 500 rupees out of selling tea, and she said, it makes me feel so independent because I can now buy shoes and clothes and books for my children. So I think these were very good stories. But what we did in addition was, on the back of this, we launched an education program. And that was a cost to us, and we said girls in rural India, linked to these villages where we were selling, who want to do post-school, so they want to do graduation or post-graduation, and we would fund their tuition fees wherever they wanted to study. And I think that was very empowering for these girls.
So let me come back to the question that I was asking you. And if I were to, you know, a B school student, let's say, you know, I mean, a lot of students are faced with this question of how do they become good managers, right? So this is a question that has to be perhaps asked and addressed much earlier than later. How do they incorporate this into their thinking, you know, about doing good, of course making sure that it fits with the brand and the purpose of the corporation and so on?
I think, you know, Govind, one very short phrase which for me captures the whole thing is purity of intent. If you have purity of intent, some of the first things that I think these young managers should deal with is to have that purity of intent which relates to all the compliance issues, relates to all the quality issues. You know, we pride ourselves on this Jugadu attitude. The Jugadu attitude is fine when you don't have many resources at your command. You know, then you have to improvise and do things, which is a great thing. But when you have resources at your command, you don't need to be Jugadu. You need to be very organized and very well thought out about the fact that you are not compromising quality standards. You're not finding little ways around the law.
Sure.
And I think these are
so that's phase 1.
Yes, that's purity of intent. And I think then it goes on to expansiveness of intent, where you try and be inclusive and try to do things in a way which actually create long-term value for people who you deal with in business. It could be suppliers, it could be consumers, it could be, you know, distributor salesmen. I can give you an example in Tata Global Beverages. All FMCG companies have a lot of distributors, and essentially the selling happens through their people, the distributor salesmen. And we said these people travel all over the country, and can we do something to protect them in case they have an accident? So we had a group policy where we covered more than 3,000 distributor sales rep on accident insurance. And we just took it as a cost of business because, you know, there wasn't this forced 2% at that time. So that was expansiveness. And I think where it nets out for the organization is it builds a very strong and a positive connection with your stakeholder. So the distributors were extremely happy that the company's actually taken up.
Right. So would a Jaago Re campaign come under expansiveness of intent, or is it another sort of stage beyond that?
I think it's beyond that. I think it was very much smack in the center of getting the brand to behave like a leader. So it was very much in the domain of brand communication, corporate brand communication, if you like to call it that.
Right. So if you look at the landscape today, and you know the issues that you feel need you know addressing in some form or the other. So this is one issue, which is to say that bring Young India into the voting bloc. What are the other kind of issues you feel that need to be addressed and can be addressed with, let's say, the kind of money and the organizing power that India Inc. has?
You know, it's we are such a large nation, and we are, I think, the largest or second largest producer of practically a whole bunch of agri products. So there's milk, tea, there's rice, wheat, fruit and vegetable, and the list goes on, sugar, etc. And 2/3 of our country still lives in what we call rural India. And we call it rural India because I think normal urbanites find it hard to connect with rural India, either mentally or physically. They can't get there. But I think that's the real you know, area of play for corporates. And I think they do need to bring about transformative social change. And I think one of the ways to do it is to actually look for projects where they can co-create value with the people in the village. And it could be, I mean, you can call it impact investing, you can call it long-term sustainable, strategic CSR, we can give it many names, but I think net, if we can work on the principles that we are here not to do a crutch strategy. We're not looking to put in grant money. We're not looking here to just sign a check. We're not looking at philanthropy, right? We're looking at creating value, co-creating value. So look at projects, businesses that you can help these people to set up. Maybe, I mean, it can go anywhere. It can go into healthcare, it can go into education, it can go into building agri products. It can go into food processing, putting in infrastructure, all things that will co-create value both for the, the villager and or the farmer and the company.
So is that a sort of evolution in your own thinking? I mean, so Jaago Re was really communicating to people to mobilize them to do something. So what you're saying now is really on ground, physical, holding hand, investing and so on.
Yes, I think definitely there is an evolution, and I have been exposed to some projects in between my time in Tata Tea and now. So
what's next?
I don't know. We'll see.
And do you have a campaign that you're thinking of now? Which, I mean, so much has changed since then, right? I mean, you've had the whole Aam Aadmi Party phenomenon, and there are, in some ways it's connected, I guess, or a result of the efforts that people like you have set off at an earlier date. Would there be an unfinished agenda of sorts in that space?
In terms of communication, no, I wouldn't like to comment on that. I think brands have their own way of judging. There are lots of external measures that you use to judge the journey of the brand, and I don't think I'll step into that area, because I think Tata Tea needs to figure out for itself.
Yeah, not for Tata Tea. I'm saying if you were holding a similar portfolio.
But I think this whole thing of mobilizing the youth, I think it was a wonderful idea. I think the Aam Aadmi Party has demonstrated that when you can actually make it come alive, how you can make it work for yourself. And that's the real power of India. I mean, we are today one of the youngest countries in the world. And we keep talking about this demographic dividend, and if we don't want it to become demographic liability, I think this is the group we have to work with. We have to work with them in terms of educating them, in terms of improving their skills, making them more adaptable, and finding them employment. And we hear all these large objectives of we need to employ 15 million people a year. I believe in the last decade we've done 6 to 8 million people a year, but that's half of what we need to do. And this time will slowly go away. What's happened to China? China is now a median age of 39 years. India has a median age of 25 years. And in another 20 years, our demographic profile will be very different. So this is the time where we really need to pick up these initiatives, as I said, with a very transformative sort of a mindset, and get to work.
Right, that's a good note to end on. Thank you so much, Sangeeta.
Thanks.